Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. As many of you have been listening to our program for the last 15 years, you realize one of the elements we like to talk about is people who want to achieve their dreams. But there is a tremendous difference, should we say even a chasm, between people who just simply dream and think it's going to come to them through the power of intention, and those who actually take action, where they discover that the journey itself actually creates what can be an incredible life. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is someone who considers herself to be what is known as an ontological life coach. She is a former quitter who's going to talk about how she made her own hot mess of transformation and invites people to step into her own power as she guides many on how to clear the space to unleash their greatness. Her book is Giving Up. Giving Up. Actually, that's the same title. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today, I'd like to welcome to our program Ms. Abigail Gazda. Abigail, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Hi, thank you so much, Daniel. Pleasure to be here.
Enthusiasm, okay? So you've taken a lot of different roles in your life, as I understand. It's quite a potpourri, if you will. Tell us what's going on here.
Yeah. Sometimes I even like to joke, like, I'm a cat who's lived 6 of her 9 lives already.
There you go.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I just really have gone through a lot of transformation in the past couple of years, and as far as it has to go with dreaming, just being an example in the world that you can actually live your dreams. You don't just have to dream them and put them way down the road.
So now, let's talk about, were you someone who kind of gotten started on things in pursuit and then just kind of given up, or you just thought, well, I'm going to find something else to do because maybe the effort here just isn't worth the time?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mixed bag there because I first off became a teacher, and I really, from 9th grade on, even from farther back than that, I always thought that's what I wanted to be. And I'm sure people can relate is that sometimes you hit a goal and you get there and it's that mountain peak moment like, well, I made it, now what? And the goal, you hit it and it doesn't turn out the way you imagined it to be. And that's a lot of what I talk about in the book is what I call that white picket fence vision, is where we dream up our dreams and we make them really rosy and really beautiful. And sometimes we create them and they're not what we thought they would be, and we find ourselves really disappointed in that. And for me, one of those dreams was college basketball. And once I got there, I was looking around and it wasn't what I thought it would be. And I also was injured in my college basketball career, and I went through a really big identity crisis. So it certainly didn't go the way that I had planned. And parts of my we all have that inner dialogue, and I like to call that our inner critic. And my inner critic really developed in those days. And so I started to talk to myself in this way where that's kind of how the identity of the quitter was also developed is, you did it wrong. It's not the way you wanted it. You should have had a better dream. There's all sorts of inner dialogue, and we all tend to have our own flavor of it. But as I've gone through my growth in my young adulthood, I really found the inner critic getting louder and louder. And then that's where I really identified as a quitter is when things would get tough, I'd pack up and I'd get going. Instead of facing anything that challenged me, I would kind of develop the ego like, I don't need this, and I would turn around and leave before anybody or anything hurt me. So really that identity of quitter began to shape how I was acting and how I was being in the world. And so it really became a challenge to hold on to anything. And I really started to feel like a quitter until I realized it's okay to evolve just as a human being. And back to what I was saying about becoming a teacher that was a really lifelong dream. And it didn't look the way I had set it up to be, so I ran off from it. But really, what I started to grow into that was the first phase of a really big dream. Because as you mentioned to the group that I'm an ontological life coach now, And I really relate to myself still as teacher and educator and mentor and coach. And ontology is the study of the nature of being. And so what I work with is people's soul and their spirit and who they are, not what they are. And what I learned is who I am is a teacher, not what I am. So I get to take that identity into any role in my life. And so I'm not a quitter. I've learned that it's an expression of who I am. And so I've really grabbed onto who I am instead of what I do in the world and how it shows up in the physical representation.
Now, let's talk about quitting, as you say, and a lot of people do this because you talk about in your book about how people tend to identify or label themselves. Mm-hmm. So let's say a good example is you could be someone who happens to be out to lunch, and you're being served by someone who's in the food service industry, for instance. Mm-hmm. This is just a waiter. Okay, so a lot of people don't think much about what that job is. In fact, they kind of consider it to be kind of one of those, well, you don't really need a big education and so forth to do this kind of work. But they don't realize what the experts in the industry do, that they don't just take your order and serve food and chew bubble gum and pull pencils out of their hair. That they're actually experts in crafting and experience. The good ones are anyway, okay?
Yes.
But it's really amazing, even people like that, how sometimes they think very little about what it is they do.
Yeah. Great point there. And even in the book I mentioned, server or waiter, waitress is a great example. And in the book I talk about like a store clerk, like the people that's behind the cash register, who we may consider that a menial job or title it and have a story about it. And sometimes you're right. Even the people in the position do. But you also notice those people that absolutely shine through. When you meet someone who absolutely loves their job and loves what they do, even if it's server or store clerk. And they greet you with that smile. You can expect them there all the time and just really loving their job. And like you said it, Daniel, is so great, making the experience great. Because what you tend to realize, or something to kind of say to listeners, is when we find what is an expression of ourselves and an expression of our gifts and our skills and our spirit, our soul just shines right through. It doesn't matter what the role that it shows up in, as long as it's an expression of who we are. Because then you notice when people are living that kind of style, or living that lifestyle, and they've created their life around their spirit and their expression, man, they just show up, and you can see it, and they're free, and they just have a different level of self. And so, yes, it can show up in any role in the world, and it's just so beautiful to see.
Now, but the thing is, too, what I wanted to point out is how sometimes many people will actually, because of their identity with that particular role, compare themselves with others who believe because whatever they do pays a lot more money, has more prestige, for instance, that somehow they feel like they're lesser people. And so you can see that there must be a fear that occurs behind quitting. And you talk about that in the book. Why don't you go ahead and describe that for our listeners?
Yes. Thanks for clarifying. And it's so spot on because we often, first off, it's not my quote, but comparison is the thief of all joy. When we start looking at what others have or the way that they live, immediately we start comparing and we look at what we don't have as opposed to what we do have. And so it can really take away from us going for what's next for ourselves. And then as far as you're mentioning with the fear, it's really important to spend some time figuratively in the mirror about what holds us back from the fullest expression of ourselves. Because for me, that waitress job, like that not going past what stops you, was teacher. I went there and I started to recognize, there's something bigger for me. And so I'm speaking to those who really feel boxed in by that, not by looking at the lives of others, but maybe that they have a dream bigger than where they currently are, and yet they haven't gone for it. it causes us to stay in the same job that we may realize we don't love for years or decades. And it's that there is a fear to be dealt with. And oftentimes some of those fears, our inner critic starts to tell us, well, you're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You're not educated enough. You're not ready yet. And it's all story. Our fears, they will be there. But the story that we tell ourselves about the fears are what truly stop us. And our stories have to do with that internal dialogue. We create labels about ourselves like ready or not ready, smart or not smart, all of the different conversations that will have us stay where we are as opposed to going for the dreams. And kind of, we were just talking about that in the beginning of the call, is we kind of just cast them out there as dreams that will never be achieved. And we just continue to be daydreamers as opposed to day doers, just getting out there and putting our feet to the pavement and actually tackling what we want in life. And so it begins to mess further with our identity and our ego that we haven't gone for it. Now we are a quitter. Now we are lazy or incompetent or can't do it or shy even. We use whatever story we need to protect ourselves from the actual confrontation, because it is confronting. I can promise you it will get uncomfortable to go for your dreams. And so us as just naturally, there's nothing wrong with it, but us as humans, we love our comforts. And so sometimes our perceived misery where we stay still, we stay stuck, or we stay in a job we may not like or a position, our perceived misery is more comfortable than the declared unknown. So those dreams are better off as dreams because we know how uncomfortable it may be to go for them.
So let's talk about you becoming an ontological coach. Now, you must have had a lot of dialogue going on in your own mind about, who am I to think that I'm worthy enough or good enough or whatever you go ahead and describe that language for me. Before you decided, I'm going to claim this, and actually be this because, God dang it, this is exactly who I am.
Honestly, Daniel, I could still tell you sometimes today that I wonder.
Oh, I'm sure of that.
Yeah, and again, it's all inner critic, and it's just silly because, as I climb, I keep climbing. I still have visions of a fuller life, and I still create that for myself and step into it. So what I want to normalize is how this inner dialogue doesn't go away. And I will totally get to your question, but I just want to normalize this for anybody going for their dreams or still just sitting there dreaming, that the dialogue doesn't go away. Your sense of self and your experience of self grows bigger and more powerful such that it doesn't stop you anymore. So I can certainly attest to the inner critic and the inner dialogue and my quitters just telling me, who the heck are you to call yourself some ontological life coach? Like, I started when I was 26 years old. So even attempting to coach somebody 10, 15, 20 years older than me was saying, my inner dialogue, who the heck are you and what do you know to help them? And my favorite response to that part of my critic is just, I don't know what's good for people. I can say that flat out. I'm not the expert of what's good for you. I'm the expert of helping you find your own answers from within, because it's a human experience to be seeking outside of us validation for answers. And so that's what I started doing. When I started becoming a life coach, I went through a 12-month program called Accomplishment Coaching, in which I completely transformed my own life. And in that transformation was where I found my own sense of self to say, yes, I'm a life coach. Let me support you in having the life you love. But I certainly didn't start out in month one saying, hi, I'm Abigail, I'm a life coach, and I know how to help you. Like, no, it was not that way at all. And so I really had to continue to step into the face of fear and what was fearful was, how do I introduce myself and truly believe I'm someone who can support others and be a coach? I knew how to be a teacher. I can teach people a lot of things. But that's not what coach does. Coach really unveils who that person is, who they've been since they were born. And life tends to happen to us and pile on top. And I had to have my own experience of what my clients experience, where I like to have them imagine, like, make a fist with your right hand and then pile your left hand on top. And that's your, adolescence. And then pile the other hand, and it's middle school and then high school and, college and jobs. Those things begin to cover up who we truly are. And when I did my own work, and when I work with people, I begin to peel back those layers of life that have piled on top of our true identity, and that identity begins to surface again. And so I began to surface myself, my confidence, my love. I have an intense amount of love, and I bring that to the surface of my life, and I get to truly live that out loud now. And I certainly wasn't doing that while I was being all of my quitters. I was living out some facade or some identity, and I certainly wasn't a representation. I was a physical representation of the way that my life had gone. So my past was really living in my present, and I was projecting it into my future. And now I get to truly call myself a coach, and I get to be present in the moment and declare a future that I want to live and live into it, as opposed to dictating it from my past. And my past is the one who wouldn't have the confidence to say, I'm a coach. And for anybody listening, it's often our past that tells us the way our future will go. And so the work that I do with people is to really get complete with the past, gain their closure, find their identity, create their identity. Really, it's about finding your sense of self and then creating a declared future.
Now, when you talk about, it was something I wanted to clue into here, and that is your different quitters. Now, you described 6 types of quitters in your book. Tell us what those are.
Yeah, great question. And I love them because they often represent a different phase of my life. And I call it the different phases of quitterdom in order to truly accept and love myself. And so I talk about the subtle quitter. And in that chapter, I really talk about, obviously, the subtle quitter is the subtle quitter, like secretive, discreet. I actually didn't know she was there my whole life. And I talk about my spiritual journey in that chapter and how I, quote unquote, quit religion. And it wasn't a better than. It was really how I realized I hadn't found or felt the presence of God in my life. And because of it, I resented him. I didn't like the name God, and I grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic school 1st through 8th grade and was raised in it. And then I went to a Catholic college. And so I've gone through a lot of different phases of spirituality in which I became more connected to what anyone may call God or spirit or universe or source energy, all of the different things. I finally felt connected. And so the subtle quitter is a story about quitting religion, but finding my spirituality. And it's just it's a beautiful chapter, and it's a really proud, I love that story of my life because I've come around to spirit, and it's amazing. So the noble quitter is a lot of the teacher quitter, and the noble quitter is the one who says, I don't need this crap, and I make quitting look really noble. And I'm a quitter all the same. That's going to be the baseline conversation, is it's all a quitter all the same, running from the things that confront us. So a lot of times, beyond growing and experiencing something, I tend to protect my heart and back off when it seems dangerous, scary, or really challenging. And then the tired quitter is the chapter in which I talk about being asked for a divorce. And I met the tired quitter through my ex-husband. I remember him saying when he asked me for a divorce, we were together for 6 years and married for 6 months, and I came home one night and he goes, I'm tired of doing what everyone else thinks I should be doing. And it just struck me as I saw for him how he had agreed his life away into marriage. Like, yes, honey, yes, honey, yes, honey. yes, Mom and Dad, yes, anybody. And I saw my own tired quitter represented, like mirror reflected in him. Because then I saw the way I was living to be perfect, and this was monumental for me. I am an overachiever perfectionist, as you said in the beginning. I used to be, and that was how I lived, to feel good enough and feel loved. I'd be the winner. I'd be the best. I'd be the best wife and girlfriend or the best athlete, and that created a sense of self for me in all of my achievements, in all of my trophies, in my relationship. And so what I realized as the tired quitter was I was tired of putting on the charade that I had it all together or that I was some type of perfect. I let that go. And then I did make my own hot mess of transformation, and it was quite the mess. I really had to deal with not making things look perfect in order to make some progress in my life, and I sure as heck did. So then I met the jaded quitter, and the jaded quitter was a culmination of all of the quitters in my life, because I have tried many ventures. I have, from college athlete to, teacher to LA fitness manager. When I left teaching, I tried to open my own gym, and I tell this story in my book, and I didn't do it. I failed. It didn't go through, and I started, so what the jaded quitter started to do was collect evidence. Okay, this didn't work. This didn't work. I failed at this. This didn't go the way I wanted. And man, by the end of this dreary road and all the evidence, like you can consider, or like visualize me walking with all this baggage and piles of paper of evidence that tells me life won't go the way I want it to go. And I was carrying a backpack and 2 luggage bags and, all these things weighing me down. And I was the jaded quitter in life, and I had no enthusiasm, no spirit, and certainly no sense of self. I stopped starting anything because I was convinced I would fail at it. So the jaded quitter was certainly jaded. She didn't believe in possibility. She didn't believe in things working out for her. She was a divorcee, not much to show for what she had worked so hard for in life, an injured athlete. Like, the story could go on. So the jaded quitter was quite a broken spirit, and really in that moment at the lowest point for herself. And then the self-righteous quitter comes into play. And this is where I do start my ontological training program, and I start to find myself. And the self-righteous quitter was an identity that all of the rest of the quitters truly needed in order to become woman Abigail. And the self-righteous quitter is the one who started to see all of these things not working for her. And man, she took her life back. So as far as the self-righteous quitter goes, I kind of joke, I quit everything with both middle fingers up, like, you're not going to tell me what to do. And the self-righteous quitter had a badge of honor, a cape, a trident, and all of the things I needed to start to gain my traction back in life. And so I quit a lot of things, and I started to tell people, take your opinion somewhere else. I'm working on me right now. And it was kind of life under construction type of mode. But the self-righteous quitter, I really did hide behind her to take my life back. It was a phase in life that I needed in order to, again, gain that traction and that sense of self and start to create my own life out of who I am and, again, not what I am. So I love that moment of being her. And then there was the enlightened quitter. The enlightened quitter is that moment where the self-righteous quitter, she really paved a way. But then I kind of arrived at this moment in my life where I realized everything I was up to, coaching. At that point in my life, I took on recovery. So I joined a support group for divorcees. I was going to therapy. I did it all to really take care of myself, which in the book, and I'd love to talk to the listeners about this, if it's not life coaching for you, I 100% support anybody getting counseling, therapy, support, speaking out loud about what you're going through in order to get that any support that you need, because you cannot be supported if people don't know what you need. And I want to say that loud and clear, because I went to work on fixing myself, and in trying to do that, I realized there's nothing to fix. I'm not broken. I am fine the way that I am, and I'm perfect. And the way that it's gone is perfect. And I wouldn't be who I am without the way that it's gone. And I say that so sternly because I'm a fixer, and I'm talking to all the fixers out there wondering what's wrong with them. There is nothing wrong with you. And the enlightened quitter, just the clouds opened up and the sea parted, and I realized I'm fine, and I became the enlightened quitter. I quit the fixing, and I quit the therapy, and I quit the counseling and the support group, and I just got a little bit, for a while, until my egos came back in, and I had to, sort through that. But what I'm trying to say is the enlightened quitter realized we're fine. Everybody's fine. And so then I just got to be me and take that and create my life out of it. And that's the last quitter to really talk about, because from there, I really just learned to know all my quitters, because they're all still there. You better believe that I'm the self-righteous quitter from time to time. Or the jaded quitter tells me, don't forget the evidence about life. And it's still the conversation, but the difference is that I know them. They're part of who I am. They are not everything about who I am. I'm Abigail, and who I create myself to be is powerful, impactful, loving woman, and I live out of that. And the quitters, they're here, but I sit at the round table with them, I hear them out, and I move on with my life. And I create my life from who I am, not what my identities have created.
And it's such an amazing thing, I think, for the people out there listening today about that, how we buy into our story, then we take that and we look for evidence outside of ourselves to believe that's true. And then we start structuring and making a solid belief, so that way the reality continues to reinforce the illusion itself. And that's what it is. It's just an illusion. And, even myself, I think we all are there until we step through that moment in time and say, are we going to keep buying this story and cry every time we see a movie or read or hear a story about someone else who made their dreams come true, and realize, well, that was good for them, but perhaps not for me? How long do we want to keep doing this? And I remember even a time, and we're talking many years ago, that as I started getting into my dream of broadcasting was that I would look at billboards with the local newscasters and think to myself, but who am I to think that I'm worthy to do what those guys do?
Yeah.
I don't belong in that inner sanctum, so to speak. In fact, here's a funny story. I remember one day I had the courage, as there was this radio station that I used to pass by fairly frequently driving out to a particular area of town. And one day I just simply decided to go in. And the fear that I had inside of myself just doing that simple act was pretty incredible when I look back on it in retrospect. The two people that I happened to run into there happened to be the station manager and the sales manager. They just happened to be sitting there in the office talking with each other, and, what can we do to help you? So I told them this is what I was there for. And they said, well, you've got a pretty darn good voice for radio. You should do it, and why don't you go ahead and give us a resume, even if you don't have experience, we'll see, how we can take it from there. And they actually took time to talk to me about this. And this is literally what came out of my mouth. And I said, geez, this was a lot easier than I thought it was. I expected, seriously, and I painted this picture, of barbed wire fences and people holding machine guns. I actually said this to him, and it's amazing the reality we create in our mind does not match up to the reality that's in front of us until you reinforce that inner reality to a degree that it becomes real on the outer. And then where are you going to be? So if that's possible, what is possible if you decide to reverse that and say, but what if I pursue my dream and give it all I've got? If I stumble and fall, who could I reach out to that could assist me through that? Then this is what you talk a lot about in your book. Mm-hmm. And you would simply find yourself astounded by what you're capable of doing. And the simple question, there are two questions when I have those kinds of doubts, and I know that I've seen the same similarity in your book on giving up, is this. When you start to hear that story, that inner critic, for instance, it may pop up, who do you think you are? You're not good enough, whatever the case is. And this was one that I'm going to attribute to one Byron Katie. I don't know if you're familiar with her work. And she simply says, what evidence do you have that this is true? And if you can just simply get into that habit of asking your inner critic that question, you'd be surprised how it answers, because it stands there and it doesn't. It has no idea what evidence it has. And I think it's just so funny that even when I got into that simple habit, how I was starting to step into claiming, where I wanted to go and what I wanted for my life. And the truth of the matter is, you're going to have obstacles, but it's all pretty goddamn easy. It's easier than you thought it was anyway, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. First off, thank you for sharing that story. First off, it's heartwarming. 2, it's that simple. And 3, I want to ask you, for the listeners, because you gave something up. By opening that door, what did you give up?
As far as going to the station?
Yeah.
What I actually gave up, I guess I just gave up on the fear of thinking what something was in pursuit of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and especially what you said is like you thought it would be barbed wire and machine guns. Like you gave up an illusion, like that you gave up that fear to truly just walk right into it. And by assertion, excuse me for the assertion, but you gained your career out of it.
Yeah,
you just really created it, and it's so amazing. And we don't have any evidence. Our fear is total story. And so I love it so much because it's just so spot on. And we all have some flavor of it, because I certainly, for me, those fears were like, oh my gosh, if I ask, what will they think of me? And I had a huge fear of what will they think of me? How could I dare be so bold? And so I'm just so related to you. And I also appreciate you sharing that story, because those bigger dreams, like you're a radio, like you're this persona for thousands and thousands of people. And I'm sure that, when we look up at someone who truly is living their dream, we think that they've had it all along. And that is not the case. There's no evidence that says that people who are living their dreams have gone through the fear of living their dream. And so it's not all been sunshine and roses and skipping through the park. It's the nitty-gritty of just stepping past your fear. And you're right, Daniel, it is simpler than we think. For me, it's picking up the phone and asking. For you, it's walking through the doors and asking. But there's going to be a common theme: asking, going for it, action. Action is truly the thing between us and our dream life. And we put up those barbed wires, machine guns, and fences in the way of our action. And it really can stop people. But I love your share, because it is so simple. It's not as tough as we make it, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an obstacle course to get there.
And going back to what you said earlier about having, I guess, a moment in time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't really have a belief in God. You felt like God had abandoned you. How come everybody else gets the blessings and I don't? And, it's pretty amazing to realize that God, let's just say, is pretty much there all the time.
Yeah.
And that you're not. And when we have these obstacles, especially in pursuit of the dreams, people go, well, why isn't this working easy? I tell you this, if there's one habit anybody listening today can take away, is if you think this is true, that these people who have made a tear come to your eye because they've achieved their dreams, pick up a biography or an autobiography and read about their lives, and you'll realize a lot of these people didn't have it as easy as you think they did. In fact, they go through things that you think to yourself, geez, I don't know if I could have gone through that,
Yeah.
And when you realize this, that these are all just regular people just like you. And in fact, this is where my second thought comes from, too. Anything you decide to do in life that you want to pursue, someone else has done. And if you could do that, or if they could do that, well, so can you. You come into this world more or less equipped with the same thing. A soul, a heart, a mind to think with. You get all the same tools everybody else does. The question is, how willing are you to hone those tools and to shape them? And how driven are you to go after what you want? And it's pretty astounding stuff.
Oh, my gosh. And I can totally come back at you in one swoop. So it's amazing because you mentioned God, and what I realized was, again, I was looking outside of me for him, and I wasn't finding him because I was never looking within. And I was just so taken aback to realize one day, oh my gosh, I am God. You're right, he is present all the time. And the world is so loud, right? Like, it's 2018. There's cars and trucks and cell phones and jobs and kids and like everything that can distract us, that we never get quiet enough to just be still. And the work that I do with people, like, it does not matter what denomination, because, our spirituality, I never realized, like, I had felt it, but until I discovered how connected we all are, because we are of the same thing, I wasn't connected even to others sometimes. I would protect myself from trusting other people even, not just God. It was like I couldn't count on anything outside of me. I was very self-reliant, and it didn't serve me, and that was broken. That was like not working for me. And so when I realized we are all one and the same, oh my gosh, I was just set free to love. And the name of my business is Hearts Unleashed, and it is truly my mission in the world. Like, that's my coaching practice, because that's what I live in. We are all of God. We are made in the likeness. We are perfect. We are whole. We are complete. There's nothing you need to become. Simply open yourself up and, like, become yourself. And you're right, we're all the same. We've all gone through the same things. And, open an autobiography, open any of that, and realize we've all struggled in some way, shape, or form. And that it's only become to polish us, to truly have us accept ourselves, love ourselves, and then own it and share ourselves. And so that's my invitation to people who are looking at others saying, what do they got that I don't? Nothing. We've maybe courage and we've stepped a little bit farther past, but don't think that you're alone in a struggle that you may be faced with. And also don't think that you're not completely skilled and ready and capable to have the life you want. And I love that you acknowledge what I share in the book is I didn't do this alone. I constantly reached my hand out for the people who would support me, for my accountabilities in life, to go for it, not quit anymore, not quit on who I know myself to be. And what in that process, I became very responsible for the gift that I am. Daniel, you're a gift. Like, however many people, I think it's like up in the 4,000s. I'm just making numbers up, but like people come to listen to you because you're a gift to this world. And I'm telling each listener, look, you maybe you haven't found it yet, but you're a gift, and you are uniquely responsible for sharing the gift that you are with this world. Unleash the heart that you have and get quiet enough to listen to the whispers of your heart. That's God talking directly to you. And I thought some sign is going to smack me in the face or something miraculous was going to happen in front of my eyes. It's happening within me. It's happening where I'm doing the work of trusting trusting my whispers and trusting the pulls, like the passion that I have. And we all have it. And guys, it's not going to go away. You can pile on a job. You can pile on a relationship. Whatever your heart continuously pulls you towards, that is God telling you, go for it. Have the courage. You don't need to be scared anymore. Just go for what you're passionate about, and you can continue to create your life. And there are people in the world to support you when it gets really scary.
Oh, absolutely. There's always a lot of people out there that are willing to help you move forward. And I'll tell you, as we end the program here, that as I was talking about outside evidence that supports your reality, well, it does the very same thing when you're on your life's path, when you're actually following the special reason that you're here.
Yeah.
And I remember my own children as they were growing up. It was from Deepak Chopra, who had suggested this is the question you should continuously ask your children. And I started to, and it was always a lot of fun. And that is just simply this. What special reason do you believe you were put here for?
Beautiful.
And so in saying that, when I eventually finally decided to pursue my dream of being in broadcasting, I started with the PBS network up in Portland, Oregon. And I started doing what I'm doing today, an interview-style talk show, which is something I never thought of. I always thought of spinning records and being a disc jockey, kind of like Machine Gun Kelly out of L.A. or Wolfman Jack, those kind of guys. That's what I was inspired by. But so there I was, and I had one guest that was coming into town in a few days that I was really excited about meeting, because this was a time that I was meeting and actually face-to-face doing interviews quite often at the station. And I had, I was just taking in the day. It was a nice kind of a sunny day, and I was on my way to pick up one of my children from school, but I had some time. So I'm, driving along, and I just had this buzz in my head as I was thinking about this guest coming up that I was excited to meet and, being prepared and realizing, I'm actually really doing this. This is really cool. And I was listening to, it was actually M. Scott Peck's The Road Less Traveled and Beyond. Book on tape. Okay, now think about that. The road less traveled is usually for all of us who don't travel the road that is our dream, I think. That's a road that's less traveled by many people. So as I'm sitting there with this buzz, all of a sudden a blue van I just happened to notice was right in front of me. And I swear this is true. On the license plate, the actual license plate, not fully spelled out, but certainly in a text form, it said, God bless you. And I was like, there's that outer sign. And you're going to get a lot of those in your life when you're on the right path, when you're on your path. And it's pretty amazing. Did you have something like that for yourself?
Oh, plenty of times. And thanks for saying that, because you could have been in that traffic and distracted by what's coming and to not notice that, right? That it's this little thing right there in front of you. And I've had I'm sorting through my thoughts as I do this or as I'm speaking to you, because I have countless times like that. And I'm really searching for one, because I'm like filing through my memory.
Just a matter of picking which one of those 6 quitters that won't shut up in your head right now, right?
Oh my, exactly. Like, wait, tell them this.
Let's look for the enlightened one here. The enlightened quitter is the one we want to tell everybody else to be quiet. We'll talk. We'll hear them. So.
Yes. Well, what's amazing is I'm a big believer in creating those for myself, right? And so, I will put up little reminders, little tidbits. I change the background on my phone, like, keep going, something like to remind myself, because I know it's, sometimes it does get scary. And so for me, I have it, is like when I'm really fearful, or I love, so energy levels, like being able to think of somebody and then within the next 24 hours receiving a phone call from them. That happens way more often than I can imagine, than I imagine is normal for other people. But that's a huge sign for me, is I'll be thinking of somebody, I wonder how they are, I should check in with them, and they actually phone me. And I'm so tapped in to, I go, oh, you must have been catching my vibes. I kind of joke about it, but it happens so often. And I realize, that's that little tap on the shoulder to get going. Or don't stop. Your signals literally are so powerful that you are calling your life towards you. And I love it. I love it every time it happens. And I kind of do a little finger point to the sky like, I got you. I hear you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Abigail, it's been a wonderful pleasure to have you here on the program today to enlighten our listeners about their particular quitter type, and that quitting is okay depending on what you're quitting for and what you're quitting, actually. And that's a decision that only you can make. But the question is, when you decide to quit, do you feel a loss or do you feel a gain? I suppose it would get that simple, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, amazing. Is there a website people can find out more about your work?
Yes, certainly. So it's my name, AbigailGazda.com, and I can really quickly, AbigailGazda, AbigailGazda.com. My book is available on there, my coaching services. I'm a public speaker. I love the work that I do, and I love speaking to the masses to just let everybody know you're great and you're responsible for your life, and your quitters can take a hike.
Absolutely. Let them go quit something else.
Yeah. What's that? Yeah, exactly. Go find something else to quit. Yeah.
Well, Abigail, thank you so much for joining us here on the program today. And again, the book is Giving Up. You'll see that on the cover there. Nice, smiley, wonderful woman there. The Memoir of a Quitter, joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. Abigail, thank you so much.
Daniel, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.
You bet. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for not quitting and staying in tune. You can also discover more if you visit us at Beyond50Radio.com. That is the number 50. We do encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter. Keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50, as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.